The job didn't come from an agency. It came from a flyer tucked under my windshield wiper. A piece of thick, parchment-like paper smelling faintly of old cedar and iron. Maintenance overnighter needed at St. Jude's Preparatory School. Emergency pay. The property requires silent attention. Inquire at the gatehouse. I drove up to St. Jude's that evening. It was a massive Gothic structure, more like a castle than a school, sitting alone on a forested hill. A small man in a tweed coat met me. He didn't shake my hand. He simply handed me a heavy leather-bound book, an old textbook titled Ethics and Conduct. "You are here to ensure the silence of the grounds," he murmured, his eyes darting toward the dark bell tower. "The headmaster has left instructions. You must follow them to the letter. Do not stray. Now the main doors are open. Your shift starts at 10 p.m. sharp." The massive doors of the school closed behind me with a sickening thud. The air inside was freezing, carrying the scent of candle wax and forgotten secrets. On the front lecture hall desk lay a sheet of paper, already inserted into the antique textbook. Rule 1. The clock is never wrong. If the chimes are early, you must believe them and prepare quickly. As if on cue, a single deep chime rang from the bell tower overhead. 10 o'clock. My shift had begun. I started my rounds in the West Wing dormitory, long rows of empty brass beds draped in white sheets. At 10:30 p.m., the dormitory hallway echoed with giggling, children's laughter, muffled and joyful, coming from the end of the hall where the matron's room used to be. The sheet of paper bled ink, fresh words appearing. Rule 2. If you hear the laughter of the day students, do not look for them. They are not laughing at anything you would want to see. The laughter followed me down the long, polished hallway, growing louder and closer, sounding less joyful and more like a breathless frenzy. I kept my eyes fixed on the fire extinguisher case until the sounds faded behind the heavy door. By 11:15 p.m., I passed the library. It was dark, but a tall ladder was slowly rolling along the center aisle, its brass wheels squeaking faintly against the marble. The pages trembled in my grip. Rule 3. Do not allow the library ladder to pass you. If you get ahead of it, it will come back for you faster than you can run. I had to speed up, jogging silently down the hall to stay ahead of the unnerving, slow squeak of the ladder as it pursued me with deliberate patience. I didn't breathe a sigh of relief until I rounded the corner. At 12 a.m., the main academic hall was silent, save for a frantic scratching coming from behind the wooden lockers. It sounded like a dog trapped behind thin wood. The folder pulsed hot in my hand. Rule 4. Never open the lockers. The creatures inside are not looking for food, but for a new skin. The scratching grew desperate, accompanied by low, wet whimpering. The wood of the locker nearest me buckled slightly. I pressed myself against the opposite wall and hurried past the row, convinced that any second something clawed would burst out. By 1 a.m., I reached the art studio. The room was empty, but every easel held a canvas covered in a heavy black cloth. Suddenly, one of the cloths rippled, falling to the floor. The revealed painting showed a distorted, grinning version of my own face. The rule burned across the page. Rule 5. If a portrait falls, do not look at it. You will see what you truly are. My heart slammed against my ribs. I forced myself to stare at the wall, backing out of the studio. The painted eyes in the portrait tracking my movement, pulling at my vision. At 1:45 a.m., I was in the administrative office when I noticed it. The faint, warm smell of fresh cigar smoke. It wasn't strong, but it was definite, drifting from the headmaster's study down the hall. The ink bled a thick, oily black. Rule 6. If you smell the headmaster's cigar, he is near. Do not speak. His lesson is not for you. I pressed myself into the shadows behind a filing cabinet. I heard a low, throaty cough followed by the soft, rhythmic click of a man pacing the study floor. The smell of the smoke grew overwhelming, stinging my eyes. I held my breath, waiting motionless until the cough and the pacing finally ceased. At 2:30 a.m., I climbed the staircase to the music conservatory. The grand piano on the stage started to play a slow, funereal march, but the keys remained perfectly still. The music played itself. The paper trembled violently in my hand. Rule 7. The music requires a conductor. If the piano plays, walk immediately to the center of the stage, bow and say, "The maestro rests." The urgency of the rule was terrifying. I walked onto the dark stage floor, bowed deeply toward the silent piano, and spoke the absurd line into the oppressive silence. "The maestro rests." The music stopped instantly, and the silence that followed felt heavy, suffocating. I fled the stage. By 3:15 a.m., I was checking the basement entrance. The main stone hallway here was lined with empty bronze plaques, all freshly polished. As I watched, dark, wet words began to crawl across one plaque. "Here lies the student who turned back." The folder hissed a warning words. Rule 8. The plaques write the names of the failed. Do not read them, or your name will be next. I kept my gaze rigidly fixed on the far wall, sprinting down the hallway. The sound of scratching and names being etched into the bronze chasing me until I reached the final door. The final low chime rang out from the bell tower. 4 o'clock. The final words appeared in bold strokes on the page. Rule 9. When the final bell tolls, leave through the main doors. If the headmaster waits there, do not stop, do not acknowledge his lesson. I bolted through the halls, out of the darkness and into the lobby. The great heavy wooden doors stood slightly ajar. But standing between me and the exit, with his back to me, was the small man in the tweed coat. The one who gave me the book. The headmaster. He didn't move. He simply stood there waiting for me to approach. I kept my eyes fixed on the sliver of cold dawn light coming from outside. I didn't slow down, didn't breathe, and didn't acknowledge him. I ran past his silent, motionless form, bursting out the doors and into the safety of the morning. I ran until the entire Gothic silhouette of St. Jude's was hidden by the trees. Later, when I opened the book, the rules were gone. The pages were blank, except for one small, faint addition etched into the leather cover. Lesson learned.